Yes, welcome to eVision Live. eVision Live today again on the might inside of you. Today on our evolutionary heritage.
Welcome to your happy, healthy, fulfilled life.
With Dr. Alexandra Kleeberg
And Dietrich Busacker.
Welcome. Well, we're talking about deep trust in yourself, deep trust in life today. What can you say about it? What do you have any examples from your practice work that you can give us?
Literature says that deep trust is important for healing and for feeling confidence in life. There are cases of people that don't have deep trust, and we teach this so everybody who doesn't have it can get it, but it's a very good foundation, I think, for your life. It makes you feel safe, secure, in your center, and loved, deeply loved. So it's a little bit like a tree.
Okay.
If you're imagining a tree with big roots down in the earth and even rooted to other trees. So it's a root network which we have in the earth.
We nowadays even know that when trees are rooted, they are even more stable against all the external influences.
Thunderstorms, lightnings, and so forth, wind, organs. And it's the same with your personality. When you're deeply rooted and maybe even held by a network of people which are deeply rooted, then you are less
vulnerable
to challenges from the outside. And if you don't have it, your roots might not be so deep and you're shaken and stressed more easily. So trust is very, very important. You can do it without trust, but trust makes it easier, I would think.
Okay, so you're watching eVision Live on the power inside of you and on your evolutionary heritage. Last time we discussed about this issue of the cells, but maybe Alexandra, you can present yourself a little bit. My vision is to get this idea of self-healing into the world. How did you get to this question of deep trust? What is your personal story about that?
I'm from a farmer's home, and if anybody of you grew up on a farm, you probably know that it's a lot of work. And my parents were working. They got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes they came back from the fields at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So I was very much on my own. Not in the winter time, they had more time, but maybe from spring all around summer to autumn. So there was, even after my birth, they put me in a cradle someplace and they left for work. And so I was very much alone as a small child, and I didn't really trust human beings. But where I felt trust and love and roots was in nature. I was alone on the countryside. I was playing with animals. I was climbing trees. So this was more trustful for me than the people. They were very stable. They were punctual. I have a Prussian heritage, so they came in time. So I knew that was stable and secure, but the emotional contact was rare and the hugging was rare. They were very much into work all the time. So this is my personal trust experience, or not experience. So if you work with a personal trust, you might imagine yourself parents that are there all the time and that hug you and talk with you and express their emotions.
But today we are talking about a trust that goes much, much further back in time. You say sometimes vary about this. Last time we just discussed about the first cells, this heritage which is inside of you, and this trust. Would you say does it go back to the first cells, or
yes?
And can you feel it till today?
A lot of psychologists work on the layer of personal trust, and that's an important layer in our history. But our history goes farther back as human beings and as living beings. And you can heal this personal trust layer by imagining new parents, for example. But there is something else which I think is more powerful, is very deeply rooted, and everybody has it. And if you're watching this video, you certainly have it. It's this organism of cells that is millions of years old. I talked about this in the last video, that the first cells were created themselves in this first ocean. And they had an image of their wholeness, or a blueprint of their wholeness. I rather like the word image, because blueprint is technical. Maybe men like better blueprints.
I love the blueprint.
Yes, I love the imagination. So that might be a difference. So they must have some sort of inner image which helped them to repair themselves. And they had not the easy life of civilization which we have now. There were volcanoes, there were thunderstorms, there were heat and cold, freezing cold. So they had a very challenging environment, and they adapted to that. And they even created, I think, new inner images. Or they widened them or deepened them, or
it must have been, because otherwise we would still be cells in the ocean. They developed new forms of life till the human life.
Yes, so the image of wholeness which they had was not stable in the sense that you couldn't change it, but it was a learning image of wholeness. And they learned all along over the millennia. And they learn to work with each other, win-win. Our body is a win-win. There is no competition between the liver and the stomach, or between the heart and the lungs. There's no competition in the body.
In the healthy body.
In a healthy body, yes, it's a win-win. So the cells learned that, and they saved all their experiences of adaptation, of challenges, and how to deal with challenges, their creativity in a code, which is called the DNA. And in another step in evolution, they created sexuality, that there are men and women, and they exchanged these codes. So this opened up new forms of variety. So they are very, very genius. There's the gene in genius. I like that. So these cells are genius. And up to that they created living beings which walked on land and which flew in the air and dived deep into the waters, and they learned how to change the sunlight into energy. So they were very, very, very smart. They were able to adapt, they were creative, and they were highly intelligent. And you still have this intelligence and this possibility to adaptation and to renewal in your body. And a little bit before 12 o'clock, if you have the evolution as 1 hour, human beings came into the world, and we also contributed to the creativity and to the genius of evolution. We had this upright position which enabled us to breathe and speak differently, and we created language, we created different layers of communication, we developed different brains which animals don't have. So it is a line of adaptation, of creativity, of perfection, you can say, of wholeness. And as you might know, I'm a Jungian analyst, and we would call it an archetypal self-healing evolution. Like the first cell, you can say, is like a mandala. It's a membrane that surrounded an inside. That's a mandala. It's the archetype of the self. And the first cell is the first archetype of the self.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then there is a row of wholenesses, of self-wholenesses in different forms and different varieties.
And this idea of a mandala, of a wholeness, is, I think you find it in any culture.
You find it in India, in China, with the American Indians. You find it in Christian mythology.
In Africa.
Find it everywhere, yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's why Jung calls this an archetype, because it's universal. It's a universal structure that creates our lives and creates our being. And there's a lot of discussion even in his books, what is the self? And Jung says the self is the center, and it's the whole at the same time. So the self has different layers. So if we talk about self-healing, you can listen to it in different ways. You can listen to it as if the self has to be healed.
Yes.
You can listen to it as if the self is the healing instance, or if it is just both.
Great. You have this lady who had really a traumatic start in her life. Maybe you talk about the story a little bit. Give us a bit, because she used actually this idea of evolutionary heritage to heal herself and to get into her potential.
Yes, she had a trauma just after birth. She was taken away from her mother. She was born in the 60s, and in Germany in the 60s there was no rooming in. Like if a child had a baby, had some disease, it was taken away and the mother was not allowed to visit. They were afraid of infection, and they said, oh, at that age you don't notice what is happening, and so forth. So there are a lot of traumas in the 60s and in the beginning 70s in Germany. Children that are born in the 80s, it's different. Like parents are invited. No. And before that, in the 40s and 30s and 20s, it wasn't like that, because you don't have this hospital child care in that sense. So in the 60s and 70s, this is a very common trust-losing situation. And she remembered that, and that she sort of closed up towards people. And in a group session, I made this imagination down the ancestral line over all the living creatures back to the first cells. And she imagined that this row of winners stood behind her. And they are all... We stem from the winners. You stem from the winners. I stem from the winners. You stem from the winners. You don't stem from those cells who were destroyed in a volcano eruption. You don't stem from the cells that were drowned in the waters. You stem from the cells that were creative, intelligent, adaptive enough to make it up to you.
And the strongest. If you look back in human history, at least we stem also from the winners, those who did win the wars, who did survive any disease, who did survive drought situation, who did survive hunger, and all these kinds of things.
Yes. It's another question about the wars and the winners. I think we stem from the most aggressive men and the most obedient women.
Okay.
So we don't stem from the strong women. They were torn apart.
At least in history for a long time.
At least in European history. So that's another question. So I would like to discuss it in a sort of objective way. So we stem from those who survived all sorts of challenges.
And this knowledge is inside of
And
us.
this
It's
knowledge
inside of our genes.
Yes, and it's inside of your genes, and you can deeply, deeply trust your body. It's millions of years old, and it's a row of ancestors of winners behind you. And this lady, she imagined this row and these roots. She took the image of it. We talked about the tree with the roots in the earth, and she had these roots throughout time, over centuries, over millennia, over millions of years back to the first cells. There were long, wide roots, and she felt very, very strong. She felt whole. She felt supported with the power of evolution.
Oh, that's great. So I love this image that you have once point you are rooted in the earth, with your feet in the ground, rooted. On this side, you're rooted back into history in all this time back. So, and you have the multidimensional rooting of security, of deep trust inside of you.
Yes, and we have a little present for you. You can download it here. It's a picture of the ancestor row throughout the last hundreds of millions of years, and you can just download it. You can put your own picture at the front and imagine all the strength in the back, and you can color it a little and just put it on your pinboard, put it on your refrigerator, and always when you pass by, imagine the archetypal strength and trust that is in your heritage and still is in your body.
And this, I think, this image you find down below. We give you the link, but it's also this you can use to imagine. It's an imagination. It's not a question of what evolution is. No question about this. It's just an imagination. Yet we are stemming from those who are winners. We are stemming from the cells that survived.
It's an imagination to strengthen you, to empower you, and to deeply trust the wisdom of your body and the wisdom of your heritage. Whatever happened at your birth, whatever traumas happened to your parents or your grandparents, just go deep, deep, deep back and feel the strength of these genius selves and genius beings that all are behind you, that help to create you.
And this lady, what did she do with this?
She felt good about it.
She felt good about it.
It was an important step in her growing into health and fulfillment. And she used this image over and over and over again, so she could deeply trust this image.
So it's again this question of that you have to exercise to do it over and over
again
for some time.
Put it on your refrigerator, put it beside your bed, and always when you go to sleep, imagine there is this power of creation which created you, and when you wake up in the morning, it's your first image, the power of creation, the power of millions of years is integrated, it's inside me, it's in my body, and that's a power, it's a strength, it's a might, it's a chance. So just use it, it's yours.
Okay, thank you. So we talked about our evolutionary heritage, which is so important for any kind of self-healing. And thank you so much for watching. Please leave your comments below, and also what are your images for deep trust? We would really be curious to know if you have images for deep trust which are helping you. Please put them down. They might be very important also for other people watching this broadcast here, so that you also can exchange on this. Maybe we had the root of the trees. Maybe there are other. You said about nature is important. You had this caressing is very important. All these kinds. What is really strengthening your deep trust And I think that these are very important elements. Please put them down. Leave your comments, your takeaways, please, below.
Okay. Open your heart and start.
Thank you, and see you next time again, next Tuesday at the same time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.